Hello everyone and welcome to the Commexis Cast Daily, all the news you need to know from our inbox to yours. I'm Matthew McGrorty, the videographer and podcaster here at Commexis, and today I am joined by the lead strategist at Commexis, Phillip Brooks.
Good afternoon.
And the president of Commexis, Len Ward.
Good afternoon.
So for today, our two stories. Google AMP has made a couple big announcements about different ways that you'll be able to use new iterations of it for different things. But first, Phillip, if you wouldn't mind giving a little explanation of what Google AMP is.
Sure. So Google AMP is Google's developer-related, basically it's a set of guidelines that they to create accelerated mobile pages. These are pages that are optimized for viewing on a mobile device. They load quicker. They just plain work better, and they tend to rank a little better than normal pages when it comes to content that's going to show up on your mobile page searches. So on the search for mobile, you'll see the AMP pages come up. It's clearly delineated. It says AMP page, AMP, and they're really just another way of Google to give you an option to create content that is really optimized for the mobile platform and will get your stuff out there in front of the right eyes.
Yeah. So one of the first things that Google announced was that they're going to be bringing AMP to email. Specifically, they call it Google Developer Preview of AMP for email. Right now it's going to be coming to Gmail. And the goal here is to give a little bit better interactivity with the emails that you get, as well as faster loading. So one of the things they mentioned was that you'll be able to quickly take actions like submit an RSVP to an event, schedule an appointment, or fill out a questionnaire right from the email message. One of the other things they say was that many people rely on email for information about flights, events, news, purchases, and beyond. More than 270 billion emails are sent a day, and the goal here for AMP is that they'll be able to basically continuously update through one email rather than sort of multiple different emails. So for example, if you use Google Calendar like we do, if you change a time and somebody hasn't read or accepted an email yet, it will automatically update in that email if you're using AMP for Gmail. So what do we think about this, guys?
Well, I think it's a really nice feature, especially if you're looking for ways to improve your ROI on email-based marketing kind of plans. So you can do a lot of different things with the AMP platform. Again, they started off sort of as a list of requirements set by Google's development team. So they were fairly loose in the beginning. Now they've gotten more refined and more refined as well. But the really cool thing about this is that you can do all this stuff without having to leave your email. The only thing that I would be a little concerned about is if you're in a situation, let's say, for example, you're on a plane and you're in airplane mode. If you don't have that continuously updating connection, you're not going to be able to make use of this. So, this is something that definitely requires an always-on connection. So it makes it pretty useful for a mobile device or a handheld or something like that. But it does have some drawbacks if you're not in a continuously available internet area.
Yeah. So Len, in comparison to regular sort of email marketing, how much of a, I guess, quote unquote game changer is this, or is this just something that adds some nice functionality?
I think it adds nice functionality. I don't know if necessarily is a game changer. I mean, I really like the calendar, how you get that updates, because a lot of times when somebody doesn't read it, and that is really strong. I mean, this is kind of going off topic here, but Google's bigger problem is they got to fix Gmail because it's a mess. I mean, but I don't think it's a game changer, but I really do like the features about how you can make these changes with an email. I do like that a lot. The calendar is really big.
Yeah. Well, it looks like, for one, Google has said in their blog posts that companies like Pinterest, Booking.com, and Doodle are developing some new experiences for consumers using AMP for Gmail. So they're looking forward to seeing what they do with that, and I'm sure I'm looking forward to seeing
another piece to consider too is you're getting fewer emails from these these distributors, so you're going to be less likely to get some exhaustion with the amount of things that you're seeing. You can get here's all of our sales for February, and then each week they can just update the content in that email, and obviously the onus is on the user to go back and look at it.
Is that the question? So you have to go. So if you're going to get Nike is going to send you something, and this is what we have going on for the month. So you got to keep going back in and looking for that email.
Yeah,
well, that's something from a consumer standpoint. Unless you're really loyal to a brand, you're not going to constantly be going back in and looking for the update. couldn't you just kind of follow them on Facebook and see the update there? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I wonder if that's something, obviously that functionality is probably not something that people are going to do with it because of that very reason, but it was one of the first things I thought of. Is just like, well, you only need to get one email from them, then you can just keep checking it. So
I'll do anything to get only one email from certain companies. For example, Old Navy, who likes to send an email almost every day, and it kills me. So there you go. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely interesting functionality. I'm interested to see how, especially brands like Pinterest and Booking.com and stuff like that, decide to use it. For our second story today, Google AMP is also going to be coming to Google search results, but not in the way that they're normally there. So Google AMP Stories are going to be coming to Google search results, and Google AMP Stories are effectively Instagram or Snapchat stories that publishers are going to be able to have in search results that people can then click on and sort of browse through highly visual story content. They're actually out now, so you're able to not only go and look at a couple of brands. The brands that are first involved with the early development were CNN, Condé Nast, Hearst, Mashable, Meredith, Mike, Vox Media, and The Washington Post. When I was on my phone, for some reason, I couldn't find them just by Googling the brands. I don't know what's the deal with that, but CNN, for example, they have their own webpage completely dedicated to it. So if you're on a desktop and you want to see what they might look like, you can check out CNN's, for example, and I'll put a link to that in the description because I really liked that I was actually able to see it on desktop and not just on my phone. So the Washington Post lead product manager, Dave Morrell, said that the ideal AMP story is one that is a highly compelling and visual story that you can tell in just a few slides, and he thinks video and AMP stories will be a primary driver of engagement for users. So what do we think about this? I mean, I from what I saw with CNN and a couple of the other images that they had in their blog post, I think this is definitely something that'll be interesting, but I'm interested in seeing how publishers will take advantage of it.
I think the development of this particular tool is actually a step forward for Google in that it seems that they've taken a consultative approach with a lot of these vendors and said, hey, look, what are some of the other ways that we can get your content out there? And this kind of conversation that they had with some of these publishers is exactly how this product came to be developed. It's still in the experimental stages, so that's kind of interesting to see what could potentially happen with it going forward. Another piece that they're lacking is a monetization element, which again, we tend to take for granted in a lot of ways, but there's things that they can do to this that make it completely unusable, like a lot of the other things that are out there. So they're already kicking around things like interstitials, pre-roll, and it's like, all right, well, you know what, it's just like everything else now. I don't know if I'm all that excited about it. If they can really do something groundbreaking with how they're getting the content sponsored and getting it actually monetized in such a way that it doesn't detract from the user experience, then you've got me listening to this new format. Otherwise, I don't see why I want to do this over any of the other avenues I have available to me as a content publisher on Google.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I mean, my first thought was making branded content slides the same way that some brands make, videos and stuff like that. And that's not exactly different, but I mean, not every single person's looking at that stuff on Snapchat, especially with some of the fire that Snapchat's gotten in response to their new redesign. So I think it's just one more avenue. I mean, everything I saw from, especially CNN's one of the ones that I looked at a nice Olympic one. I mean, they seemed pretty nice. I don't know why I couldn't find it on my phone yet. is another big thing. So I don't know, Len, what do you think?
I like it. I think it's beginning to cater towards what we've long said, that your search results are going to clearly be leaned heavily towards video. We've all thought it was going to be here by now, and it hasn't been. But I think this is a really good way to digest and put content out there. Phil made a good point. How are you going to monetize it? How are you going to ruin it? Hopefully you don't. But then exactly what type of content will excel in there, and obviously publishers is going to do very well. But then you have to kind of wonder, like, how does this pertain to somebody searching for a product or searching for a service? Like, what can you do out there? What kind of content can you put out there? If you're an attorney, what could you put on there? If you're a B2B, like, what can you do that would make it beneficial? I think it's another way to put content out there, and I like it. I think it's a good idea, and I like to see where Google goes with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest piece of to add to what you're saying is simply that it depends on where Google decides the real estate goes on the SERPs.
Exactly.
Because if they gave it some sort of prevalence, then obviously it's going to become a must-have sort of strategy for other people. So in the experimental stage, it's difficult to make those kinds of guesses. But if it becomes a viable, the way that it becomes a viable channel is determined by where they put this on the SERPs.
Absolutely. Well, if you're interested in Google AMP, it is out now for people to go and experiment with. So I'll have a link to that in the description of the podcast. And if you're interested in Google AMP for Gmail, there is also a sign up that Google is doing, which I will also have a link to in the description, though that is a little, I think, a little more exclusive than Google AMP is. Google AMP also has some tutorials for web developers and some other documentation that might be interesting for web developers in particular. I took a look at it and I didn't really understand it, but I'm not a web developer, so it's okay. So thank you everybody for tuning into today's episode of the Commexis Cast Daily. Check us out tomorrow for more of the latest trending news. Have a great day.